I said I was going to do this at home, but I ended up just not doing it at home, so I'm going to do it here. So, yay, let's get started. I'm going to start from the bottom of page 15 and take it from there, I believe. Yes. At this point, Miss Baker said, absolutely, with such suddenness that I started, was the first time, was the first word she had uttered since I came into the room. I think that was the last bit that I read yesterday. I'm trying to find an angle where I don't look so hideous. The gray hairs look bad, I know, but I'm not ashamed of them. I'm going to be 51 next week. So, but yeah, I just don't like how this whole thing looks at the moment. I look chubby, which I'm not. I look like I have bags under my eyes, which I do not. It's just the shadows and shades of the room. But anyway, it doesn't matter. So, the last video stopped still in this moment that Nick is having with these two girls, and we get very good descriptions of Daisy and how she acts and what kind of impression she makes on people. Daisy is very important to the entire narrative. Some may argue that she is one of the protagonists along with Gatsby and Nick, and others may disagree. That's the beauty about literature. You can interpret things. You can read something and have your own take. Of course, if you're taking a literature exam and they ask you, hey, what happened in chapter 2? Did this and this happen? So facts and elements of the storyline are unchanged for everybody, but your interpretation and the symbolic value you may find in certain elements of it, they're up to the individual reader. Evidently, it surprised her as much as it did me, for she yawned and with a series of rapid, deft movements stood up into the room. I'm stiff, she complained. I've been lying on that sofa for as long as I can remember. Don't look at me, Daisy retorted. I've been trying to get you to New York all afternoon. No thanks, said Miss Baker to the 4 cocktails just in from the pantry. I'm absolutely in training. Her host looked at her incredulously. You are. He took down his drink as if it were a drop in the bottom of a glass. How you ever get anything done is beyond me. I looked at Miss Baker, wondering what it was she got done. I enjoyed looking at her. She was a slender, small-breasted girl with an erect carriage, which she accentuated by throwing her body backward at the shoulders like a young cadet. Her gray, sun-strained eyes looked back at me with polite, reciprocal curiosity. Out of a wan, charming, discontented face. There are lots of adjectives and lots of adverbs in here. And I love teaching grammar. And I think that there is no other more fantastic place to teach grammar from than literature. So let's talk about some of the adverbs in here. If you look at how the actions of the characters are described, how somebody does something is usually an adverb. Let's take a look at the examples here. She remarked contemptuously. Contemptuously, that's an adverb. Adverb, near the verb, right? I always take it for granted that people know these things, but an adverb modifies a verb. To modify, to change, right? So when you say, I came into the room sadly, I came into the room sadly. So how did I come into the room? Sadly. That's the manner in which I did it. Contemptuously, with contempt. Another adverb on the following paragraph, wedging his tense arm imperatively under mine. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of how a character does something. It's often a technique that a lot of writers will use to add detail to the narrative. How did that character perform an action? So in Norwegian, most of my students at the moment are Norwegian. So I talk about Norwegian a lot on my videos. In this language, Norwegian, yes, it is a language. Some people don't realize that, but yes, in Norway, that is the language, Norwegian. People learn English as a foreign language here. And just so people know, English as a foreign language is for the expanding circles of English, where English is learned, but not one of the official languages in that country. In India and in the Philippines, for example, English is a second language, not a foreign language. It's one of the official languages. But I digress. So in Norwegian, adverbs and adjectives are the same. And I have to always, when I'm teaching grammar to Norwegian students, I have to tell them, hey, the way you do something, that's an adverb. How you are is an adjective. So I can say Bob is handsome. He dances beautifully. How does he dance? He dances beautifully. Beautifully is an adverb. Handsome is an adjective. So here is this girl saying she's stiff, right? So when she gets up and says she's stiff, stiff is an adjective. And then when later it is said that her host looked at her incredulously. Incredulously, that's an adverb. So the differences between adjectives and adverbs. That's probably what I'm going to put on the title of this video. And there goes another close to, I'm going to try to do 5 more minutes before anyone gets in here. I mean, I can still do it, but people already find me weird because I walk around carrying lots of bags, carrying extra jackets, wearing more layers than everyone else. And I guess I wear more layers because, not because I'm just afraid of the cold. Sometimes I'm cold. Sometimes I'm just afraid of what the weather is going to do on that day. I'm going to try to do 5 more minutes. I looked at Miss Baker, wondering what it was she got done. I enjoyed looking at her. She was a slender, small-breasted girl with an erect carriage, which she accentuated with throwing her body backward at the shoulders like a young cadet. Her gray, sun-strained eyes looked back at me with polite, reciprocal curiosity out of a wan, charming, discontented face. It occurred to me now that I had seen her, or a picture of her, somewhere before. "You live in West Egg," she remarked contemptuously. "I know somebody there." "I don't know a single—" "You must know Gatsby." "Gatsby?" demanded Daisy. "What Gatsby?" Before I could reply that he was my neighbor, dinner was announced. Wedging his tense arm imperatively under mine, Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room as though he were moving a checker to another square. I always want to keep going, but then I have to stop. There's so much in here. Gatsby is now introduced. He gave name to the novel, and he is introduced in a conversation between the characters. And now we know, you must know Gatsby. And Nick was about to talk about how he was his neighbor, but then they were summoned for dinner. There's also something important here. So when you make a comparison, there are different types of comparisons that you can make. You can have a metaphor, and you can also have different types of figures in literature, literary figures, where you can make comparisons, where you can express something instead of saying what you want to say. For instance, here, he said, that's Nick. Nick is the narrator, but he's also one of the main characters. Narrator. That's a big, 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 big role to play. You're telling the story, you're part of the story. So, Tom Buchanan compelled me from the room as though he were moving a checker to another square. So, the analogy here of how he moved is taking him from the room. And then you have the game of checkers when you move a piece. So is there a symbolic value here? Is this checker piece perhaps a form of manipulation? Are we saying that Tom Buchanan is somehow manipulative? Is this a subtle hint of something else? Is it, or is it not? And that's the beauty of literature for you. You can make your own assumptions and have your own interpretations for your own pleasure, right? But when you have a teacher asking you questions and giving you an exam and saying, hey, I want to know what the storyline is here. I want you to identify the main characters. So perhaps there isn't one protagonist. Perhaps there are more. If you make a good case, your teacher will acknowledge that. Well, a good teacher would do it. And they might even accept your answer, even if it's not the answer she was looking for. He was looking for. They were looking for. So Gatsby is introduced. We have a subtle hint that Tom Buchanan might be a manipulative person or not. Maybe I'm just picking up on something that's not there. A lot's going on here. Slenderly, languidly, more adverbs. Yay! Their hands sat lightly on their hips. The two young women preceded us out on a rosy-colored porch opened toward the sunset, where four candles flickered on the table in the diminished wind. I like this. I like this adjective of the wind, diminished wind. Could have been a breeze, right? But I feel like diminished wind is a lot more gives a lot more impact. Why candles? Objected Daisy, frowning. She snapped them out with her fingers. In 2 weeks, it will be the longest day in the year. She looked at us radiantly. More adverbs. Radiantly. She was radiant. Radiant. Adjective. Radiantly. That's an adverb. How did she do it? She did it radiantly. Do you always watch for the longest day of the year and then miss it? I always watch for the longest day in the year and then miss it. We ought to plan something, yawned Miss Baker, sitting down at the table as if she were getting into bed. All right, said Daisy. What will we plan? She turned to me helplessly. So many adverbs. What do people plan? Before I could answer, her eyes fastened with an odd expression on her little finger. Look, she complained. I heard it. I heard it. Not I heard it, but I heard it. We all looked. The knuckle was black and blue. You did it, Tom, she said accusingly. I know you didn't mean to, but you did do it. That's what I get for marrying a brute of a man. A brute of a man. A great, big, hulking, physical specimen of a... I hate that word, hulking, objected Tom. Crossly. So many adverbs. Oh, and I went way over the 15-minute limit, but I'm going to finish the page. I hate that word, hulking, objected Tom crossly. Even in kidding. Hulking, insisted Daisy. Sometimes she and Miss Baker talked at once, unobtrusively, and with a battering consequence that was never quite chatter. That was as cool as their white dresses and their impersonal eyes in the absence of all desire. They were here, and they accepted Tom and me, making only a polite, pleasant effort to entertain or to be entertained. They knew that presently dinner would be over, and a little later, the evening too would be over and casually put away. It was sharply different from the West, where an evening was hurried from face to face towards its close in a continually disappointed anticipation, or else in sheer nervous dread of the moment itself. So I rambled on for almost 20 minutes. Very important here. We're starting to see some details about the characters. Although it is possible for an author to describe characters by just saying, Daisy was this and this and this and this, and Tom Buchanan was tall and handsome, and he spoke with a voice. Like, you can do that as an author, but you can also, through writing very good dialogue between the characters, where they show their true colors, where they show emotions, where they show attitude, and then we, the readers, can understand how the characters are. I'm going to close this video at 20 minutes, just as someone's coming in to clean, I think.